Let me take you back to a time before Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. A time before Anakin and Obi-Wan. A time before Revan and Mitra Surik. An era of true peace existed in the galaxy. The first Dark Jedi had already been defeated and banished into uncharted space, sealed off in isolation, cut off from hyperspace routes, unable to interfere in galactic affairs, never to cause problems again. Until these two idiots showed up and ruined everything. Meet Gav and Jory Daragon, a brother-sister duo who, due to their own stupidity, not only ruined their own lives, but also managed to accidentally reintroduce the Sith Empire to the galaxy. So yeah, everything from Exar Kun to Darth Sidious, that's on them. You know how stories like The Mummy start off with someone forming a get-rich-quick scheme, then stumbling upon something that should have never been found in the first place, unleashing literal hell? Yeah, it's one of those stories. A domino effect of dumb decisions, bad timing, and zero self-awareness. So join me on this deep dive of the duo that accidentally ruined the galaxy. But before we get started, our Temple Archives show that many of you have not subscribed yet. Here at the Rogue Jedi Order, we take in volunteers of all ages, no restrictions. Nothing is stopping you from force pushing that subscribe button. So if you love deep dives, spicy lore talk, and overanalyzing specific characters for fun, allow the force to guide your hand, for it is the will of the algorithm. Now first, let's give the backstory. It's about 5000 BBY, and the Koro system is locked in civil war. Princess Teta and the Rebel Uprising fight for control of the 7 worlds. The war is coming to a close as 6 of the 7 worlds have been secured by the combined efforts of Princess Teta's military and the Jedi Knights. But the last world, Kirik, sits as the rebel stronghold. With the battle for Kirik being long and exhausting, supplies for the military begin to run low. Enter Hawk and Tamir Daragon, married supply runners with nerves of Beskar. They volunteered to help the rebels and Jedi get supplies to Kirik, but they have a few issues. Their ship, Starbreaker 12, is not equipped for such a mission, and their ship that can get the job done, the Shadowrunner, is in need of repairs. Plus, they also need someone to look after their kids, Gav and Jory, who I assume are supposed to be teenagers here, even though the artwork makes them look much older. So they seek help from a trusted connection, Arba the Hutt, who is actually a Hutt who is not a crime lord. Yep, they exist. This Hutt chose a simpler life, running a service dock for ship repairs. Since Hawk and Timer's mission is just as profitable as it is dangerous, Arba repairs the Shadowrunner for them on credit, and holds their other ship, Starbreaker 12, as collateral until they get back, and even agrees to look after Gav and Jory for them. Unfortunately, this is a backstory, so I'm sure you know what happens next. Hawk and Timer are spotted by the rebels and blown out of the sky. Once news of this gets back to Arba, he informs Gav and Jory of the news, which is obviously devastating, but then does something out of character for a Hutt. He gives them their ship back, and clears their debts. Clearly this Hutt has a soft spot for this family. Just look at his face when he relays the news. He was actually hurting for the loss of his friends. Truly a Hutt who is different from the rest, because Jabba would never. He'd have the kids in chains faster than you could say carbonite. So with their parents gone but remembered as heroes of the Republic, Gav and Jory now have to face life on their own. But with a fully functioning ship, and a Hutt who's a family friend, the future looks bright for the sibling duo. Now at this point you're probably thinking, they must have gone on to do great things that would make their parents proud of them, right? Right? Well, you saw the title of this video, so here we go. So Gav and Jory decide to become hyperspace explorers. Sorry, I read that wrong. They decide to become the worst pair of hyperspace explorers the galaxy has ever known, piling up a mountain of debt with nothing to show for it. You see, in this era, the hyperspace lanes are still a far cry from being fully mapped out. Normally these exploration jobs go to the Jedi because they can use the Force to guide them around unknown space so they can find other worlds. However, independent explorers are free to do their thing because if they happen to get lucky, it's less work for the Jedi and the Republic, and for the Explorer it's a massive check. Anything for those credits. However, every time Gav and Jory go out on a mission, they come up empty. One day they think they found a lane that would act as a shortcut between Senegar, the system's capital, and a place called the Galoob Corridor. However, when coming out of the lane, they find that these coordinates lead them right into a star cluster death trap that wrecks their ship. So they take their ship back over to good old Arba, who at this point is starting to get really sick and tired of dealing with them. Because unlike their parents, they don't pay back their debts. They just keep coming back and racking up more bills and really taking advantage of Arba's kindness. However, this time Arba has had enough and holds their ship until they can pay back their debts. But Gav is not too worried because even though their new hyperspace route is essentially a death trap, somehow he managed to get the route approved by the Navigators Guild. Sounds like someone needs to be fired. But due to this turn of events, Gav is sure that someone who is capable will make use of the route, and the commission he'll get off of it will turn their lives around. I have never seen someone so right and so wrong at the same time. Enter Kahor, a not-so-legitimate merchant who is looking to increase his profits. His spies inform him on the new, highly dangerous hyperspace route to Galud, and that it would cut his travel time down by a third. So jumps at the chance to use this hyperspace route because he is sure it'll bring him fortune. But obviously things backfire as his transport ship is obliterated by the star cluster, costing him millions in credits and causing the hyperspace route to be permanently discontinued. But the lane being shut down is not good enough for Kahor, who wants payback from the man who approved the route, Shodan Ko, and the ones who mapped it. Now we never actually see Shodan Ko, but we know what happened to him. However, Gav and Jory managed to escape the same fate when they're saved by a pair of Jedi Knights, just after admitting that they themselves should have gotten some Jedi training. Wait, so you mean to tell me that these two are force sensitive but decided not to become Jedi? Only to choose a line of work that would have been much easier and more successful for them if they were, trained Jedi? The bad decisions just keep piling up. So anyway, their Jedi saviors, Udan Or and Mimit Nado, inform them that they sense danger all around them and they need to leave the entire system to find safety. So in a desperate move, they go back to Arba's shop after it closes and steal their ship back, in a very sloppy display that gets the authorities on them. So they punch in some random numbers, hit the hyperdrive, and escape into nowhere space. Now at this point, Gav and Jory have not only pissed off some criminals, and a Hutt, but they have also pissed off the Republic as well. At this point, how could things get any worse for these two? Well, you know how these stories go. It always gets worse. Because once they come out of hyperspace, they find themselves in a whole new system, and although they think their luck has turned around, they quickly find out that that's not the case because the planet that they found was Korriban, the homeworld of the Sith Empire, the descendants of the original Dark Jedi, trapped in isolation for millennia with no way to escape. Until these two show up with a modern, fully functioning navicomputer with coordinates to the Republic pre-programmed. So Gav and Jory are swiftly captured, and after realizing the weight of the situation, we get another moment of, we should have became Jedi! But instead of getting eliminated like they thought they would be, they instead get caught up in Sith politics and the Naga Sadow takeover. Someone who is going to get his own video detailing his mistakes. But for now, Naga Sadow stages a jailbreak to gain their trust. And once they take the bait, he separates the two so he can start manipulating them. He takes Gav as a new apprentice, playing on his new desire to complete his Jedi training, and he takes Jory through a complicated set of events to make her think that he's saving her from the other Sith, and sends her on her ship back to the Koro system, with the tracker on the ship so they won't be far behind. So Jory flees back to the Republic to warn them about the Sith, but she forgot that she's a fugitive. So by the time anyone decides to listen to her, it's too late. The Sith attack, and Gav is helping lead the charge. Because while learning some Sith magic from Naga Sadow, he was gaslit into thinking that all of his problems were the Republic's fault, and not of his own poor decision making. So now, on top of being stupid, Gav is also completely delusional, thinking that he's going to destroy the Republic for the sake of his sister. But when he actually sees the destruction of Senegar, he quickly realizes that once again, he's screwed up, but this time in grand fashion. So in the middle of all the chaos, Gav tries to find Jory, and decides to check Arba's shop. But the Sith soldiers follow behind him, then they run in and kill Arba right in front of him, though he didn't go down without a fight. And as Gav was trying to process what just happened, Jory shows up, blames him, though she does share a bit of the blame for all of this, and due to getting a crash course in lightsaber combat, attempts to cut down her own brother. But she manages to stop herself and instead tries to reason with him, because she thinks he's turned to the dark side. And while normally this would be the case in a Star Wars story, it's not the case for Gav. He's still the same dumbass he always was, and is just still way over his head on this one. But a dumbass can still get things right every once in a while, and Gav proves that by finally doing the right thing. He gets in his ship, locates Naga Sadow's meditation chamber, the source of his army's battle power, and opens fire, damaging the ship enough to sever the Sith battle meditation link, turning his soldiers from a major threat to basically target practice from the Jedi and Republic soldiers, ending the battle quickly. So in the end, Gav finally did something right and cleaned up his mess. Too bad it was short-lived, because once again he is tricked by Naga Sadow, who challenges him to a final showdown, only to not show up and blow Gav up from another ship as Naga Sadow makes his escape. So the Sith are beaten and driven away, and Jory is left all alone. But because she helped out in the war against the Sith, she is cleared of her crimes, and because good old was killed by the Sith, she is no longer in any sort of danger, and she decides to live a more quiet and peaceful life by taking over Arba's shop, adding the final insult to injury on the poor Hutt. Now, while she did get to have a sort of happy ending, let's not forget the most important crime here, reintroducing the Sith to Republic space. Even though Naga Sadow was beaten, he managed to escape and take what was left of the Sith Empire to the Yavin system. The Sith from that point on always knew how to find the Republic, and many Sith Lords who followed would end up using the teachings, artifacts, weapons, and even old ships that Naga Sadow or the Sith of his time left behind in their various plots. So I have to say, when looking at all the evidence, Gav and Jory are some of the dumbest, most incompetent failures to ever grace the Star Wars galaxy, because the Jedi managed to go strong with no major issues in the Order for millennia, until the Sith returned and through their very extreme practices, started turning Jedi to Sith over and over again. But what do you think of all this? Am I being too harsh? Is there someone in the galaxy who proved to be an even bigger waste of space than these two? Or are they at the top of the list for stupid? Now I hope you enjoy this little rant of mine. This all comes from the Legends comic series Tales of the Jedi, not to be confused with the TV show. It's a great story about how the Sith originally returned, and I encourage you all to read the series if you haven't done so already. The writer of the story, Kevin J. Anderson, not only gives us great Jedi and Sith characters in this story, but he absolutely nailed the dynamic of well-meaning, wildly incompetent adventurers. Because let's be honest, people like this do exist in real life. So anyway, make sure you force push that subscribe button. If you have a character you would like me to break down, or a piece of lore that you want explained, or a Star Wars question that just needs answers, drop it in the comments and I will add it to my list of future videos. And if you really want to support the Rogue Jedi Order, join our Patreon. Help us build our new Order of Jedi. So until next time, may the Force be with you.